Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. So many of you reached out wanting to know why everybody seems to be moving to Australia these days,
Yeah.
that we decided to gather up a bunch of articles and data and even personal stories
Uh,
to really dig into what's driving this global Aussie obsession.
it's pretty fascinating.
It
Yeah.
is. I mean, I've got friends who are thinking about making the move,
Yeah.
family members who've already gone.
Hmm.
It's like Australia is having a moment.
It really is. It's not just a passing trend either. This is something that's been building for a while.
Yeah.
And it's not just like backpackers and gap year students anymore.
Yeah.
We're seeing skilled professionals, families, even retirees,
Right.
all packing up and heading down under.
It's like a whole new wave of migration,
Exactly.
driven by a whole bunch of different factors.
Right.
So let's try to break it down.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, so one of the biggest things that keeps popping up in all this research
Yeah.
is this idea that Australia offers this really unique blend of culture and lifestyle.
Absolutely. And it goes way beyond, those typical images of beaches and barbecues. I think a lot of people are drawn to Australia's reputation for openness and acceptance.
Yeah.
It's a very multicultural society.
Yeah, I've heard that from a friend who moved to Sydney a few years back.
Yeah.
He was just blown away by how quickly he felt connected to people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like a superficial thing either. He really felt like he was part of a community.
Right. And that's something that comes up again and again in the research, this idea of community being really central to the Australian experience.
And there's a story that really stuck with me in one of the articles you sent.
Oh, yeah.
It was from a migrant who said, Australia welcomed me in ways I never expected. People were friendly, the culture was open, and I found myself quickly connecting with communities from all over the world.
That really speaks volumes about the kind of social fabric that exists in Australia. It's not just about tolerance.
Yeah.
It's about genuine inclusivity.
Mm.
And that can be so crucial, especially when you're starting over in a new place.
Totally. And it's not just about friendly faces either. It seems like this whole laid-back way of life is a big draw for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Australia is known for its relaxed vibe.
Yeah.
There's a big emphasis on work-life balance,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of people find appealing,
Yeah.
especially coming from, maybe more high-pressure environments.
That's so funny you say that because when I picture Australia in my mind, it's those bustling coffee shops in Melbourne
Yeah.
or the beach culture in Sydney.
Yeah.
And there is this inherent sense of relaxation and like enjoyment of life.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's not just about working hard.
Right.
It's about living well, too.
Exactly. And that can be a game changer for people who are feeling burnt out or just kind of disillusioned with their current lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this laid back atmosphere doesn't mean they're slacking off when it comes to education.
No, not at all.
Australia's education system is super highly regarded.
Oh, yeah, consistently ranked among the best in the world.
And it seems like they've struck a really interesting balance between traditional academics and practical vocational training.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether you're aiming for a degree from a top-tier university like, the University of Melbourne or the Australian National University,
Mm.
or you're looking for more specialized skills through a hands-on approach,
Yeah.
there's a pathway for you.
We actually have a testimonial from an international student who went to Australia for their master's degree.
Oh, cool.
They said, I came to Australia for my master's degree and it changed my life. The professors were supportive and I found opportunities to network and learn outside the classroom, which was invaluable.
I love that. It really highlights how it's not just about the quality of the coursework,
Right.
but also the environment,
Yeah.
the support system. They're not just churning out graduates. They're shaping well-rounded individuals.
Yeah, it's like they understand that education goes beyond just the books and the lectures.
Exactly.
And of course, all that feeds into the job market, which is another huge reason why people are heading to Australia.
For sure. Australia has a really diverse range of industries and a robust job market that's attracting skilled professionals from all corners of the globe.
So it's not just about studying there,
Right.
but about building a career.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the sectors that are particularly hot right now?
Well, we're seeing a lot of growth in fields like technology, healthcare, and engineering.
Okay.
Australia's tech scene in particular, in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, is absolutely booming.
Wow.
Salaries are often, exceeding those in Europe even.
Wow.
So it's becoming a real magnet for talented developers and engineers.
So they're positioning themselves as like a global hub for innovation.
Absolutely.
And people are taking notice.
Yeah, and it's not just about the money either.
Right.
There's a certain work culture there that people find really appealing. In one of the interviews, a skilled migrant who moved to Australia for work said, "Working in Australia was a dream come true. The work culture respects balance, and there's a real sense of purpose and respect for one's career path here.
That ties back into what we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
that emphasis on work-life balance
Yeah.
and living well. It's
Right.
like they've managed to create this work environment that's both professionally stimulating and personally fulfilling.
Right. And that's a powerful combination.
It is. But it's not all sunshine and roses, is it?
Well, no, of course not. I
Yeah.
mean, moving to a new country, no matter how appealing it might seem,
Yeah.
definitely comes with its challenges.
Adapting to a new environment,
Mm-hmm.
building a support network,
Right.
navigating a different system. I mean, it can be daunting.
It can be. But one thing that's really encouraging is that Australia seems to have a pretty robust support system in place to help migrants settle in.
Well, that's good to hear. What kind of support are we talking about?
Well, there are community groups specifically designed to welcome newcomers,
Oh, wow.
language programs to ease that transition,
Okay.
and even some government initiatives aimed at making the whole acclimation process smoother.
That's amazing. It sounds like they're really making an effort to make migrants feel welcome and supported,
Yes.
rather than just leaving them to figure things out on their own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we actually have a clip here from a migrant advocate who was surprised by how much support they found.
Really?
They said, one thing that surprised me was how much support there is. From community centers to language programs, I never felt truly alone.
That must be such a relief for someone who's just landed in a new country
Yeah?
to know that there's a safety net there,
Yeah.
a community ready to embrace them.
Totally. It's about creating a sense of belonging, making migrants feel like they're truly a part of the Australian fabric.
Right, not just visitors passing through.
Exactly.
So we've got this mix of cultural appeal, world-class education system, a thriving job market, and a supportive environment. It's no wonder people are drawn to Australia.
Yeah, a pretty compelling package.
But you know what really brings it all to life? Are the personal stories.
The human element.
Exactly. Hearing about the individual journeys of those who've made the move and how their lives have been transformed, I think that adds a whole other dimension to our understanding of why Australia is so appealing.
Absolutely. It reminds us that behind all the statistics and the data points, there are real people with real hopes and dreams.
Mm-hmm.
They're chasing new beginnings, crafting new chapters in their life stories.
Yeah, and we have this really heartwarming story here about a family whose lives were so deeply impacted by their decision to move to Australia.
Oh, wow.
They shared, our family's life changed completely when we moved here. We found a community that welcomed us, and the opportunities we've had have shaped our future.
That's beautiful. It really captures the essence of what we've been exploring,
Mm-hmm.
the potential for transformation,
Yeah.
the promise of a fresh start, that feeling of being embraced by a new community.
It's like Australia offers this blank canvas where people can paint their own vision of a fulfilling life.
It does.
But I'm curious about the impact of all this migration on Australia itself.
That's a great question, and one we should definitely explore further,
Mm.
maybe after a quick break.
Sounds good. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, let's do it. It's fascinating when you think about it. Australia is a nation built on migration.
Yeah.
From its earliest days, it's been this place where people from all over the world have come seeking opportunity, creating new lives for themselves.
It's like this ongoing story of reinvention, both
Mhm.
for the individuals who arrive
Right.
and for the country itself.
Exactly.
Just think about how that constant influx of new ideas and perspectives has shaped Australia's culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Its economy, its very identity.
Australia's multiculturalism is undoubtedly one of its greatest strengths.
I agree.
It brings such a richness and vibrancy to society, fosters innovation, creativity, a global outlook.
It's like each wave of migration adds a new layer to the tapestry of Australian life,
I like that.
making it more intricate and more beautiful.
And economically speaking, migration plays a vital role,
Oh, yeah.
filling labor shortages, driving innovation, boosting the economy.
Yeah, think about those high-demand sectors we were talking about earlier, like technology and healthcare.
A lot of those industries rely on skilled professionals from overseas.
Yeah, to meet their workforce needs.
Exactly.
So it's not just a one-way street.
No,
It's a mutually beneficial relationship.
it is.
Migrants contribute to Australian society, and Australia provides a platform for them to thrive.
Exactly. It's this symbiotic relationship that has shaped Australia into the thriving multicultural nation it is today.
Absolutely. But of course, such significant growth and change doesn't come without its challenges, right?
Right.
What about about those who are already living in Australia?
Yeah.
How do they view this influx of newcomers?
That's a really important question, and it's one that often sparks a lot of debate and discussion.
I bet.
It's essential to acknowledge that there are diverse perspectives on this issue.
Makes sense.
Not everyone sees migration in the same light.
Yeah, there are bound to be concerns and anxieties
Yeah.
that come with any significant societal shift.
Absolutely. Some people might worry about the strain on infrastructure,
Sure.
things like housing and
Yeah.
transportation,
Okay.
or the potential impact on the job market,
Yeah.
especially in certain sectors.
Right.
And of course, there are also concerns about preserving Australian culture and national identity amidst such rapid change.
Those are all valid points
They are.
that need to be addressed thoughtfully and respectfully.
Absolutely.
It's important to have these open and honest conversations about these issues
I agree.
rather than shying away from them.
But it's also crucial to emphasize that overall, Australia remains a very welcoming and inclusive society.
Well, okay.
There's a strong sense of fairness, a belief in giving everyone a fair go, regardless of their background or where they come from.
That's reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
It seems like there's this recognition that while there may be challenges, the benefits of a diverse and multicultural society outweigh the potential downsides.
Exactly. And ultimately, it's about finding ways to manage those challenges effectively while preserving the values of openness and inclusivity that make Australia so unique.
So we've explored the cultural appeal, the education system, the job market, the support systems, the personal stories, and even the impact of migration on Australian society.
Right. We're getting a pretty comprehensive view here.
Yeah, we're really getting a sense of why Australia has become such a global destination.
Oh, yeah?
But there's one aspect we haven't touched on yet,
Okay.
something that goes beyond the practicalities and the statistics.
What's that?
It's that emotional pull,
Yeah.
the intangible allure that draws people to a place.
Right.
What is it about Australia that speaks to something deep within people that ignites a desire for change and a belief in a better future?
Maybe it's that promise of a fresh start,
Mm-hmm.
the allure of wide open spaces, a connection to nature,
Yeah,
or the sense of freedom and possibility that permeates Australian culture.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the perception of a less stressful pace of life,
Yeah.
where people prioritize experiences over material possessions,
Mm.
and where community and connection are so highly valued.
It could be a combination of all those things.
Yeah.
A sense that in Australia, anything is possible,
Right.
that you can reinvent yourself, shed old limitations, embrace a new way of life.
And that sense of possibility is contagious.
It really is.
It's like a ripple effect. One person's dream of a new life in Australia inspires others to consider their own possibilities,
Yeah,
to question their assumptions about what's possible and what truly matters.
absolutely. And this isn't just limited to those who actually make the move.
Right.
Even those who choose to stay where they are might be inspired to incorporate some of those Australian values into their own lives.
That's interesting.
Whether it's prioritizing work-life balance, fostering a stronger sense of community, or simply adopting a more relaxed and optimistic outlook.
So it's almost like this Australian dream is influencing a global shift in perspective,
Yeah.
prompting people to reevaluate their priorities and seek a more fulfilling and balanced way of life.
That's a really insightful way to put it.
But let's get back to the individuals who are actually taking the plunge.
Okay.
We've talked about their hopes and dreams,
Mm-hmm.
but what about the challenges they face?
Yeah.
What are some of those unexpected hurdles they might encounter along the way?
That's a crucial point, and one we shouldn't gloss over.
Yeah.
While Australia offers incredible opportunities, it's important to remember that no place is perfect.
Right.
And one of the biggest challenges migrants often face is the cost of living,
Okay.
particularly in major cities like Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah, I've heard that housing in particular can be quite expensive in those areas.
It can be, and that's something to factor in when considering the financial implications of a move.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the issue of finding employment that matches your skills and qualifications.
Yeah.
While certain sectors are booming, the job market can still be competitive.
Right. It's not just about landing any job.
Right.
It's about finding one that aligns with your career goals,
Exactly.
allows you to thrive professionally.
What about cultural differences?
Oh, yeah.
I imagine those can take some adjusting, especially for those coming from very different backgrounds.
Absolutely. Even though Australia is a multicultural society,
Mm,
there are certain cultural norms and social cues that might be unfamiliar to newcomers.
right.
Things like communication styles, humor, social etiquette.
Yeah, all of that can vary significantly from what people are used to in their home countries.
So it's not just about learning a new language.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the nuances of social interaction,
Yeah.
those unspoken rules that govern everyday life.
Right.
And that can be a subtle but significant challenge
It can be.
for those trying to integrate into a new community.
And it's something that often gets overlooked in the excitement of starting a new adventure.
I bet.
But it's important to be aware of these potential hurdles.
Yeah.
Approach them with patience, understanding, and a willingness to adapt.
It's like any journey, there are bound to be bumps along the road.
Mm-hmm.
But with the right mindset and a bit of preparation,
Yeah.
those challenges can be overcome.
Absolutely.
And the rewards of embracing a new life in Australia can be truly life-changing.
They can be. Yeah. And sometimes those challenges can lead to unexpected growth and self-discovery,
Oh, that's interesting.
pushing people outside their comfort zones,
Mm-hmm.
allowing them to develop new skills and perspectives.
I like that.
But one of the biggest misconceptions about moving to Australia is that it's a quick fix,
Oh, really?
a guaranteed path to happiness and fulfillment.
Right. It's not a magic wand
Yeah.
that instantly erases all your problems
It's not about that.
or transforms you into a new person.
Exactly. It's important to remember that happiness and fulfillment are internal journeys, and no external change, no matter how drastic, can guarantee those outcomes.
It's about bringing your best self to the table, wherever you are in the world,
Right.
and actively creating the life you want.
Well said. And Australia, with its unique blend of opportunities, challenges, and cultural influences, can certainly provide a fertile ground for personal growth and transformation.
So while the Australian dream might be a powerful motivator, it's ultimately up to each individual to define what that dream means to them.
Yeah.
And to put in the effort to make it a reality.
Absolutely. And that brings us to an important question for our listener.
Right.
What does the Australian dream represent to you?
Oh, that's a good one.
What aspects of Australian culture, lifestyle, or opportunities resonate most deeply with your own values and aspirations?
That's a great question to ponder. And perhaps exploring those personal connections can help us understand not just the allure of Australia, but also our own desires for a more fulfilling and meaningful life, wherever that may be. It's funny, we talk about the American dream, but it seems like this Australian dream is really gaining traction on a global scale.
It is, and while there are definitely some similarities,
Yeah.
I think the Australian dream has its own distinct flavor.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, it emphasizes a more balanced and holistic approach to life, I think.
Okay, so it's not just about, material wealth
Right.
or climbing the corporate ladder.
It's about finding a sense of purpose and connection and happiness
Right.
in a more well-rounded sense.
Like prioritizing experiences
Exactly.
over possessions.
Embracing a relaxed and outdoor-oriented lifestyle,
Hmm.
fostering strong community ties.
And those values really seem to resonate with people all over the world.
As they do, particularly those who are feeling disillusioned with the pressures and complexities of modern life in their home countries.
It's like Australia offers a glimpse of a different way of being,
Yeah.
a reminder that there are alternative paths to happiness and fulfillment.
A powerful message in a world that often feels so driven by competition, consumerism, and this constant striving for more.
So what does all of this mean for our listener?
That's a great question.
Why should they care about this whole Australian migration phenomenon,
Right.
even if they have no plans to move down under?
Well, I think it challenges us to examine our own priorities,
Okay.
our own aspirations. What do you value most in life?
Yeah.
What kind of world do you want to create for yourself and for your loved ones?
Right.
What brings you a sense of joy, purpose, and belonging?
It's like a reminder that we have choices,
Exactly.
that we don't have to settle for a life that doesn't feel authentic or fulfilling.
And while moving to a new country might be a drastic step,
Sure.
it does highlight the power we have to shape our own destinies,
Yeah.
no matter where we are in the world.
We can incorporate those values that resonate with us into our own lives,
Absolutely.
whether it's, prioritizing time with loved ones, seeking out opportunities for personal growth, or just adopting a more mindful and appreciative approach to each day.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the allure of Australia, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
It's not just about whether or not Australia is the right place for you.
Right.
It's about recognizing that universal human desire for a life filled with meaning, connection, and a sense of belonging.
And whether you find that in Australia, in your own community, or somewhere in between, that journey of exploration and self-discovery is what truly matters.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep seeking those opportunities that make life truly worthwhile.
You need to watch this if you love a good adventure. Ready to explore history and travel like never before? Welcome to Two Travels and Histories. We're your ticket to the world's most fascinating places. Dive into gripping history tales, wander through stunning travel vids, and get swept away by our mind over matter podcasts. Whether you're a history buff or a travel junkie, there's Summit for everyone. So hit that subscribe button and join us on this grand adventure. Let's make memories together, one journey at a time. Cheers and see you out there.
All right, so today we're going to dive into something pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Australian permanent residency
Okay.
through skilled migration visas.
Nice.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at how to make Australia your new home without needing a job offer before you land.
That's right. It's not a pipe dream.
So we'll be breaking down the ins and outs of the 190 visa, also known as the skilled nominated visa.
Yes.
And all thanks to a great YouTube video from Life with Kioma.
Awesome.
Now, you might be thinking, hold on, didn't we already cover a similar visa? Yeah, we did touch upon the 189 visa before.
Right.
Which also leads to permanent residency without needing sponsorship.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The 190 visa has a unique twist.
Okay, what is it?
State nomination.
Ooh.
It's almost like being recruited by a specific Australian state.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, state nomination means you're essentially choosing a state or territory where you'd like to settle, and they're giving you the thumbs up.
Oh. Huh.
It's a bit like being invited to join a special club.
Okay, I'm picturing a welcome wagon and maybe some free Vegemite.
Huh.
But seriously,
Yeah.
what's the real advantage of this state nomination thing?
Well, for starters, it awards you 5 extra points toward your overall migration points.
5 points.
Yeah, 5 extra points. And that might not sound like much,
Good.
but in a competitive system where every point counts,
Right.
it can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Imagine being on the cusp of eligibility. Those 5 points could be your ticket.
Oh, wow. It's like finding a secret shortcut in a video game.
Uh-huh, exactly.
But like any good shortcut, there must be a catch.
Mm.
What's the trade-off here?
You're right. There's always a trade-off.
Okay.
With the 190 visa, you're committing to living in your nominated state for at least the first 2 years.
Okay.
Think of it as a trial period where you get to experience the state and contribute to its economy and community.
So it's not just about landing the visa.
Nope.
It's about choosing the right state for you.
Yeah.
It's about finding the place where you can really picture yourself building a life.
Exactly. It's a two-way street. The state is investing in you by nominating you,
Okay.
and you're investing in the state by committing to living there.
Makes sense.
It's all about finding that perfect match.
Now, before we get ahead of ourselves and start packing our bags,
Ah,
let's talk about who's actually eligible for this golden ticket.
all right.
Kioma really emphasized the importance of the skilled occupation list in her video.
Yeah.
And it sounds like this list holds the key to the kingdom.
It's the document you need to familiarize yourself with.
Okay.
This list outlines all the occupations that Australia needs and is willing to grant visas for.
Oh, wow.
Think of it as Australia's wish list of skilled professionals.
So if you're hoping to be a professional didgeridoo player, you might be out of luck.
Well, it's always worth checking the list,
Okay.
but chances are slim for that particular profession.
Okay.
But seriously, though, it's crucial to understand that this list isn't just about checking if your job title exists.
Right.
It's about understanding how your skills and qualifications align with Australian standards.
I'm starting to see that this is more than just ticking a box.
Mm-hmm.
There's some real research and strategy involved here.
For sure.
But before we dive into the actual application process, there's something else Kayama mentioned that I found interesting.
What's that?
State-specific lists.
Yes.
This sounds like it adds another layer of complexity.
It does, but it's all about getting granular and finding the perfect fit.
Okay.
You see, each Australian state and territory has its own list of in-demand occupations,
Oh, wow.
tailored to their unique economic needs and priorities.
So even if your occupation is on the general skilled occupation list,
Right.
you need to make sure it's also on the list of the specific state you've set your sights on.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like a double check system.
Yes.
You need to meet the general criteria
Uh-huh.
and then the specific criteria of your chosen state.
Precisely. It's about aligning your aspirations with the opportunities available in different starts.
Got it.
Yeah.
So let's say you've done your homework, you've checked both lists, and your heart is set on a particular state.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next step? What does the actual application process look like?
Well, it all starts with an expression of interest, or EOI for short.
Okay.
This is where you put your best foot forward, showcasing your skills qualifications, and that you're a good match for Australia's needs.
Okay.
It's not a full-blown application just yet.
Right.
More like a, hey, Australia, look at what I bring to the table.
So kind of like a dating profile.
Haha, you could say that.
Looking for a country to call home excellent sheep-shearing skills. Loves the outdoors.
Uh-huh. But in all seriousness, the EOI is your chance to make a strong first impression.
Right.
It's where you lay the foundation for your application.
And what happens after you hit send on that EOI? Do you just sit back and wait for the magic to happen?
Not quite. If your EOI ticks the right boxes and your nominated state sees potential in you, you'll receive an invitation to apply for the visa.
Oh, okay.
Think of it as getting that second date.
Uh-huh.
This is where the real work begins.
Right, so the invitation is like getting past the velvet rope and into the exclusive club.
Right.
What happens next on this journey?
That's when you move on to the formal visa application.
Okay.
Now, this is where things get a bit more serious.
All right.
You'll need to provide detailed documentation evidence of your qualifications and basically prove that everything you claimed in your EOI is legit.
Sounds like it's time to get organized and gather those dusty old certificates.
Sure.
But before we dive into the nitty-gritty of the application itself,
Okay.
there's something else we need to talk about. Kioma mentioned some prerequisites.
Yes.
Things you need to tackle before even thinking about applying.
Right.
What are we talking about here?
You're right. We can't just jump into the application without laying the groundwork.
Yeah.
These prerequisites are crucial, and getting them sorted early on can save you a lot of headaches down the road.
Well, let's unpack those right now, shall we?
Absolutely. Let's dive in. All right, so let's talk about these all-important prerequisites. One of the most crucial is the skills assessment.
Skills assessment sounds pretty intense. What exactly does that involve?
Well, it's essentially about proving that your skills and qualifications stack up to Australian standards. Think of it as getting your credentials verified by the professionals you'll need to submit documentation of your work experience and qualifications to the assessing authority for your specific occupation.
So there's not just one giant skills assessment HQ. There are different authorities for different occupations.
Exactly. Each profession has its own designated assessing authority, and these experts are responsible for making sure you're the real deal. They meticulously compare your skills and experience to Australian benchmarks. And trust me, they don't mess around. A positive skills assessment is non-negotiable. Without it, your visa application won't even be considered.
That makes perfect sense. You wouldn't want someone operating on you in a hospital if they haven't proven they have the skills right.
Exactly. It's all about maintaining high professional standards and ensuring everyone's safety.
So we've got our skills assessed. What's the next hurdle?
Well, no surprises here, but English proficiency is a big one. Australia has specific English language requirements for skilled migrants, and these can vary depending on your occupation.
So I'm guessing a heart surgeon would need a higher level of English fluency than, say, a landscape gardener.
It's all about ensuring you have the language skills necessary to excel in your profession and integrate into Australian society. Some occupations might require a specific score on a standardized English test like the IELTS, while others might accept alternative forms of proof like evidence of previous work experience in an English-speaking environment.
It's all about tailoring the requirements to the specific demands of each job, which makes total sense.
Right, and this is exactly why thorough research is paramount. Don't rely on generic advice or hearsay. Dig deep into the specific English language requirements for your chosen occupation. It could save you a lot of time and hassle later on.
So double check and then triple check those requirements. It sounds like being organized and prepared is key to navigating this whole process smoothly.
Couldn't agree more. Kriama, in her YouTube video, gave some great advice on this. She really emphasized the importance of gathering all the necessary documents before starting the process. This applies to both the initial expression of interest and the formal visa application itself.
It's like that saying, failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Mm.
Nobody wants to be scrambling for documents at the last minute, especially when your future's on the line. What other gems did Keoma share?
She also highlighted the importance of timing, specifically when it comes to medical examinations. Her advice is to prioritize those after receiving your invitation to apply, as they can sometimes take a while to schedule and complete. It's all about streamlining the process and minimizing delays.
That's a great tip. Thinking ahead and getting those medicals done early can definitely save you some stress down the line. Speaking of streamlining, let's address a question that often comes up and that Keoma tackled in her video. Proof of funds, do you need to be rolling in cash to qualify for these visas?
This is where it gets interesting for both the 189 and 190 visas, which both lead to permanent residency proof of funds, is not actually required.
Wait, really? I was starting to worry I'd need to raid my retirement fund.
Don't worry, you can keep that piggy bank intact. The logic behind this is that you're expected to be working and supporting yourself financially in Australia, not living off savings. Remember, these visas are about contributing to the Australian economy and society, not just enjoying the sunshine and beaches.
That makes perfect sense. It's not about being a millionaire. It's about bringing your skills and talents to the table. So far, we've covered the unique features of the 190 visa, the importance of the skilled occupation list, that multi-stage application process, and those crucial prerequisites. Is there anything else we absolutely need to cover before moving on?
I think we've laid a solid foundation, but let's not forget that the 190 visa isn't just a piece of paper, it's a gateway to a whole new life. There are some bigger picture considerations we should talk about, things that go beyond just ticking boxes on an application.
You're right. It's not just about getting to Australia. It's about thriving in Australia. Let's explore that. What kind of things should potential applicants be thinking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered the nitty-gritty of the 190 visa, but you're right, it's more than just paperwork.
Yeah, it really is. It's about finding the right fit, not just for your profession, but for your lifestyle, too.
Exactly. It's not just about getting to Australia. It's about actually building a life there.
It is. The 190 visa is about more than just ticking boxes.
Right.
It's about finding a place where you can see yourself, putting down roots.
So it sounds like choosing a state for your 190 visa is almost as important as choosing the visa itself.
It really is. Think about it. Australia is vast and diverse.
Oh, yeah.
Each state and territory has its own unique personality, culture, and lifestyle.
It's like choosing a travel destination.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't just randomly pick a spot on the map.
Right.
You'd research the climate, the culture, the things to do, and see if it aligns with your interest.
Exactly. Do your research, connect with people who have made the move to different states, and get a feel for what it's really like to live there.
Yeah, great advice.
Think about your career goals, your lifestyle preferences, and even your hobbies.
Okay.
Do you want to be in a bustling city, a laid-back coastal town, or somewhere surrounded by nature?
And remember, with a 190 visa, you're committing to living in that state for at least 2 years.
Yeah, at least 2 years.
So you want to make sure it's a place you can see yourself thriving, not just surviving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't just focus on the job opportunities. Consider the bigger picture. What kind of community do you want to be a part of?
Okay.
What are the schools like if you have children? What are the recreational activities available?
Yeah.
These are all important factors to consider.
It's about finding your Aussie tribe,
Mm-hmm.
that group of people who share your interests and values and make you feel at home.
Well said. It's about creating a life, not just fulfilling a visa requirement.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of Australian skilled migration visas, with a special focus on the 190 visa.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We've covered the ins and outs, the must-knows, and even some insider tips from Keoma herself.
Absolutely. Lots of great information.
But as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
All right.
Beyond the practicalities, beyond the checklists.
Okay.
Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself stepping off the plane in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Breathing in that fresh air, feeling the excitement of a new beginning. Where are you? What do you see? What does your Aussie life look like?
It's a journey worth taking.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe your Australian adventure is closer than you think.
Until next time, happy researching and dream big.
You need to watch this if you love a good adventure. Ready to explore history and travel like never before? Welcome to Two Travels and Histories. We're your ticket to the world's most fascinating places. Dive into gripping history tales, Wander through stunning travel vids and get swept away by our mind over matter podcasts. Whether you're a history buff or a travel junkie, there's Summit for everyone. So hit that subscribe button and join us on this grand adventure. Let's make memories together, one journey at a time. Cheers and see you out there.
All right, let's jump into another deep dive. We got a YouTube video this time from a couple who's lived in both Australia and Canada, comparing their experiences.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, and we all know this debate is one that pops up all the time, so their first-hand experience living in both places is extra interesting. They cover a ton of stuff, but we'll distill the key points and see what we can learn. Ever thought about ditching it all and moving to a new country?
I think a lot of us have had that daydream at some point.
For sure. Well, this couple actually did it twice. So, what stood out to them? Well, they jumped right into cars. Apparently, the used car market is a whole different ballgame between the two. They had a way easier time finding a decent used car in Australia. In Canada, watch out for rust and cracked windshields, they say.
Yeah, that difference in the used car market could point to a few things. In Canada, it gets cold day, right? So road salt to melt ice, that can make cars rust out faster, for sure.
Makes sense.
Plus those wild temperature swings, from like super freezing to a bit warmer, that can do a number on windshields.
True. It makes me wonder, too, if maybe Australians just trade in their cars for newer models more often, leading to a bigger pool of used cars in good shape. Do we have any stats on average car ownership in each country?
That's a great question. Maybe something to look into. And while we're at it, we could see if vehicle inspection standards differ at all between the two countries.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to, well, something a little less mechanical, weather. The couple loved that Canada has those 4 distinct seasons, each with its own special activities and celebrations.
I can see the appeal of that.
Yeah, they felt like it made each season feel way more special and unique. But they also pointed out the obvious. Canadian winters, those are serious business. 6 months or more of freezing temps, depending on where you are. That's got to be a factor for anyone considering a move.
Totally. It's a trade-off, right? Those beautiful fall colors and the snow-covered landscapes are definitely picturesque, but could you personally handle those long, dark winters? It all comes down to what you value most.
Yeah, and practically speaking, your wardrobe and your heating bill would be way different. All right, let's move on to another everyday essential, groceries. The couple found that overall, grocery costs were pretty similar between Australia and Canada, with some things cheaper in one and some cheaper in the other.
It's interesting that they said overall it basically evened out, but some specifics did stand out to them, like shampoo and conditioner being way cheaper in Canada. But they did say some food, especially produce, tended to be pricier there.
It's amazing how those seemingly small price differences can add up. Makes you think about what you prioritize in your spending.
Right, like if you're a big organic produce person or if you have specific dietary needs, those price differences could make a real impact on your budget. No small thing.
For sure. Okay, this one surprised me. The couple found Canada to be, well, surprisingly behind when it comes to administration.
Yeah.
Lots of snail mail and paperwork. They much preferred Australia's more modern digital systems.
It's easy to assume that all developed countries are on the same page technologically, but that's not always how it works out. There's all sorts of historical, political, and even cultural factors that shape a country's approach to things like digital infrastructure.
They were especially frustrated with having to snail mail job contracts as part of their application for BC health insurance. That does sound pretty old school.
It does make you think about efficiency and convenience. For someone who's used to doing everything online, a paper-based system can be a real pain.
But here's the interesting thing. Even with those administrative headaches, the couple absolutely fell in love with the Canadian lifestyle. They found it way more focused on outdoor activities and less work-centric than Australia.
It's a good reminder that sometimes those intangible things like lifestyle and cultural values can outweigh those practical considerations. Sometimes it's about the feel of a place.
Totally. They painted a picture of a culture where people think nothing of sleeping in their cars to go camping, even in the winter. Now that's dedication to the outdoors.
For sure. It speaks to a deep connection to nature and a sense of adventure that seems to be woven into the fabric of Canadian culture.
Yeah, they even noticed that people seem to live longer in Canada, and they wondered if that active lifestyle might play a role. Makes you think about how your environment can shape your overall well-being.
It's a fascinating thought. And there's definitely more and more research showing the positive impact of spending time in nature and being physically active.
They contrasted that with their perception of Australians working longer hours and not taking as many vacations. And even the camping culture was different, with Canadians being more laid back and less about having all the fancy gear.
So interesting how even an activity like camping can have different cultural flavors.
Okay, this next one is a bit more sensitive. The couple was pretty upfront about their dislike of how prevalent smoking is in Canada, both cigarettes and marijuana.
While personal preferences and tolerances vary a lot when it comes to smoking. What one person might be totally fine with, another might find really bothersome.
They felt Australia was stricter, making smoking less common and more expensive. But they stressed the importance of being considerate wherever you live and whatever your habits are.
A good reminder that even when opinions differ, respect and empathy are key.
Couldn't agree more. All right, now on to something that might be a big draw for a certain type of adventurer: seasonal work. The couple found Canada has a lot more of these jobs, often with housing included, and sometimes even meals.
That's a sweet deal, especially for anyone who's drawn to a more nomadic lifestyle or
Yeah.
wants to explore different parts of the country.
Like they talked about staying in staff housing in Lake Louise for a fraction of what tourists pay. An incredible location without breaking the bank.
Wow, that sounds like a dream come true for outdoorsy types. Combining work and adventure in a breathtaking setting? Sign me up.
All right, on to something else that got them excited. The sheer diversity of landscapes. They felt Canada had more variety, with everything from mountains and lakes to glaciers and beaches.
They said Australia has those things too, but not to the same extent. The Canadian Rockies especially really captivated them, and the abundance of wildlife too. It sounded incredible.
Okay, now get ready for this. Tipping culture. A big pet peeve for them.
They felt tipping should be a reward for exceptional service, not an obligation, which is a pretty common sentiment.
And they brought up some interesting points, like the absurdity of tipping before you've even received the service, and even the ethical considerations of low-wage earners tipping other low-wage earners.
It's a complex issue with valid points on both sides. Does tipping incentivize good service, or is it more about ensuring any service at all? Lots to unpack there.
For sure. And it really highlights how different cultures approach things like compensation and customer service. Okay, time for something a bit lighter. Coffee. Both countries have great coffee, they said, but in different ways. Australia nails those espresso drinks, while Canada is more of a drip coffee scene.
It's interesting how even something as simple as coffee can reflect cultural differences. A tiny detail that speaks volumes.
Right. And they said they actually came to enjoy drip coffee in Canada, which shows how our tastes can change.
Adapting to new flavors and experiences, that's part of the fun of exploring new places.
All right, let's talk about something practical. Proximity to other places. Australia, being an island, means long flights to reach most other continents.
Yeah, that isolation can be a plus or a minus, depending on what you value. Some people love the remoteness, while others might find it limiting.
In contrast, Canada's location makes road trips to the U.S. easy, and flights to Europe are shorter too. A definite plus for travel lovers.
Big advantage if exploring new places is high on your priority list.
Okay, time to talk about cities. They compared Calgary and Vancouver to Sydney and Brisbane. What were their thoughts?
They picked Vancouver and Sydney as their favorites, loving that blend of city life and nature you find in both. Vancouver's diverse seasons and the mountain backdrop really stood out to them. And just for fun, they mentioned disliking Brisbane's Brown River, proof that sometimes those little details can stick with you.
Totally. All right, now for something important for those thinking about actually moving. The difference between provincial versus state systems.
A key difference right there.
In Canada, the provinces have more distinct systems for things like healthcare, taxes, and education. It's not as unified as the federal system in Australia. So moving between provinces in Canada can mean more paperwork and hoops to jump through.
They mentioned having to transfer healthcare coverage, for example. So it comes down to what you prefer, right? A unified system that's consistent or the potential variety and autonomy of the provincial model.
It's all about weighing those trade-offs. And while we're on the topic of relocating, they also felt it was easier to get permanent residency in Canada, which they thought might contribute to its more multicultural feel.
That's an interesting observation. It would be fascinating to dig into those perceptions and see how they line up with actual immigration statistics.
Totally agree. So after all that, did they pick a winner?
It sounds like they lean towards Canada, but with a big if.
What was the if?
They said they'd pick Canada if they could have the same established life and career they'd built in Australia. Those roots clearly mattered a lot to them.
Makes sense. Starting over is a huge deal.
It really shows that sometimes the best country isn't just about the place itself. It's about the life you've built, the connections you have, and the opportunities available to you.
And that's a perfect segue to part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll explore some of the other fascinating things this couple had to say about their experiences in Australia and Canada.
So, picking up where we left off, it's interesting how this couple's take on things challenges some of the usual stereotypes, right? Like, Australia is supposed to be all laid back and beachy, but they actually found Canada to be more relaxed, at least about outdoor stuff.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that those stereotypes don't always tell the whole story. Everyone's experience is different, and those cultural nuances really matter.
Totally. Speaking of experiences, they had some interesting things to say about healthcare in both places. It gets you thinking about the pros and cons of different healthcare systems.
They seem to appreciate how universal Australia's Medicare system is. Coverage is the same, no matter what state you're in. That simplicity appealed to them, especially compared to Canada's provincial approach, where it's different in each province.
Yeah, that can be a pain if you move around a lot like they did. They mentioned having to transfer coverage between provinces, more paperwork, more hassle.
It's that classic trade-off, isn't it? Unified system means consistency, but a provincial system means more local control, the potential to cater to specific needs.
A debate that goes way beyond just this couple's experience. Healthcare systems reflect a country's values, and there are always upsides and downsides to each approach.
Totally. And while we're talking about systems, they also compared how taxes work in Australian states versus Canadian provinces.
Another key difference there.
They like that Australia's tax system is consistent across the board. Same rates, no matter which state you're in. Makes things easier, especially for businesses operating in multiple states.
Right. In Canada, each province does its own thing, which can make things complicated. Trying to run a business across multiple provinces sounds like a headache.
For sure.
No.
Okay, let's lighten the mood. What about fashion?
Their observations on this were pretty funny.
They noticed that Canadians seemed way less concerned with following trends compared to Australians.
They even said Canadians prioritize practicality and comfort over style, which they liked.
It's an interesting observation, isn't it? Maybe it's cultural, how people express themselves through clothing, or maybe it's just the climate and lifestyle.
Probably a mix of things. In a place with harsh winters like Canada, practical clothes are just, well, more practical.
Makes sense. They also mentioned that rent, especially in the big cities, is more expensive in Australia. That's a big consideration for anyone thinking about moving. You got to weigh the cost of living against what you can earn.
For sure. They didn't give exact numbers, but they implied that affordable housing in those desirable areas is harder to come by in Australia.
But of course, the cost of living varies a lot within each country, depending on where you are, what your lifestyle is, how much you spend.
Right. Their overall impression was that Canada is a bit more affordable, at least housing-wise.
Which goes back to priorities, doesn't it? If you're set on city life and focused on your career, that higher cost of living in Australia might not be a deal breaker if you're making more money.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance. Okay, brace yourself, Bugs. This is where it gets good.
They had some great stories. They said Canada, especially at certain times of year, has way more mosquitoes and those kinds of pesky bugs.
Makes sense with all those forests and wetlands in Canada, right? Prime bug territory. They said they had to take extra precautions to avoid getting eaten alive.
Compared to Australia, where bugs were less of an issue, they said, the climate and the types of ecosystems definitely play a role there, I'd imagine.
For sure. Australia's drier regions are probably less appealing to a lot of bugs.
Okay, onto a more delicious subject.
Food! Always a good one.
Both agreed that Australia and Canada have great and diverse food scenes, but with some key differences.
They were impressed with the fresh seafood in Australia, which isn't surprising given how much coastline they have.
Right. And they also talked about the amazing cafe culture there, so much good coffee and brunch.
And in Canada, they really loved how multicultural the food scene is. They could find amazing, affordable food from all over the world.
They specifically mentioned Asian and Middle Eastern food in Canada. Really speaks to how diverse the culture is there. They didn't pick a clear winner in the food department, which seems fair. Both countries clearly have their own strengths.
It goes to show food is more than just fuel, right? It reflects a culture's history, traditions, and values. A window into a place.
And for a lot of us, trying new foods is a big part of the travel experience.
Totally. All right, time to get down to business. Job opportunities. What did they have to say about that?
They noted that in Australia, there are a lot of jobs concentrated in the major cities, especially in certain industries.
Which means more competition, potentially, especially in those specialized fields where everyone wants to be.
Right. They felt that in Canada, the job opportunities were more spread out across the country, with more focus on things like natural resources, healthcare, and tech.
Makes sense with how huge Canada is and how important those natural resource industries are to their economy.
For sure. It suggests that the kind of work you do might really influence your decision.
If you're set on a specific niche industry, those big Australian cities might be the place to be. But if you're more open to different fields, or if you like the idea of living in a smaller town or a rural setting, Canada might have more to offer.
They also touched on work-life balance, implying that Canada is a bit more relaxed about that than Australia.
They noticed that Canadians seem to prioritize leisure time and those outdoor activities more.
Of course, work-life balance depends a lot on your specific job and the company culture, but their overall feeling was that Canada is a little more balanced in that respect. And work-life balance is a big deal for a lot of people these days, so it's worth thinking about when you're weighing job prospects in different countries.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears. Public transportation. How did they find getting around?
They had some good insights. They found that Australia's big cities generally have pretty good public transportation, especially trains and buses.
They especially liked how efficient and reliable it is in Sydney and Melbourne, two of those major hubs.
But in Canada, it was more hit or miss, depending on the city.
Some places, like Toronto and Vancouver, have great public transportation, but in others, you really need a car, they said.
Something to think about if you don't drive, or if you prefer to use public transport. And it shows how much infrastructure can impact your lifestyle and how livable a city feels.
Okay, now for the fun part. Natural beauty.
They were blown away by Australia's outback, all those red deserts, the unique wildlife, those ancient rock formations.
They described it as this raw, untamed beauty, unlike anything else.
And in Canada, the Rocky Mountains really took their breath away. All those towering peaks, pristine lakes, and glaciers.
They felt humbled by the sheer scale of the Canadian Rockies, and they loved exploring Canada's vast forests and seeing all that wildlife, too.
Both countries have incredible natural beauty, no doubt, but in different ways. So which do you prefer? The rugged desert landscapes of Australia or the mountains and forests of Canada?
Tough choice. Makes you want to book a trip, right? Okay, let's talk safety.
Both countries are considered safe overall, but they did mention that Australia has a reputation for dangerous wildlife, like venomous snakes and spiders.
It's important to be aware of your surroundings when you're out in the Australian wilderness, that's for sure.
And in Canada, they felt safe from wildlife, except for being cautious around bears in certain areas, which is understandable. They did say that they were aware of an increase in crime in some Canadian cities, though. It's always smart to stay informed and take precautions, no matter where you are.
Absolutely. Being aware is key. Okay, language and communication. This is always an interesting one for travelers. What did they notice?
They found that English is widely spoken in both countries, which is helpful for English speakers, obviously.
But they pointed out that the Australian accent and slang takes some getting used to.
They thought it was charming, but it definitely caused some confusion at times.
And in Canada, they felt the accent and slang were more familiar, closer to American English.
They also mentioned the presence of French in Canada, especially in Quebec, another layer of linguistic diversity.
Language is more than just words. It's part of a culture's identity and history.
Totally. Now, let's talk about that feeling of community and belonging. How did they feel welcomed in each country?
They shared some really sweet stories about making connections in both places. They found Australians to be super friendly and outgoing with a strong sense of community.
They felt embraced by their local community in Australia right away, which made them feel right at home.
And in Canada, people were friendly too, but maybe a little more reserved, especially in the bigger cities.
They noticed that Canadians are polite and respectful, but it might take a bit longer to build those deeper connections.
Probably comes down to cultural norms and the pace of life, right?
Oh, sure. But they stressed how important it is to be proactive and put yourself out there no matter where you are.
Joining clubs, going to community events, even just striking up conversations with people, those things can make a big difference when you're building a new social circle.
It's a good reminder that building a social life takes time and effort, no matter where you go. It's worth it, though. All right, how about entertainment and nightlife? Any good stories there?
Oh, yeah. They had some fun tales from their adventures exploring both countries' entertainment scenes.
And they said Australia has a really vibrant and diverse nightlife, especially in places like Sydney and Melbourne. Lots of choices for everyone.
They mention all sorts of bars, clubs, live music venues, and of course, there's that outdoor lifestyle with tons of beachside dining, barbecues, and festivals. Sounds pretty great.
In Canada, the nightlife was varied too, with a focus on live music and that pub culture.
They loved those cozy Canadian pubs, great places to meet people and have a local beer.
They also mentioned Canada's thriving arts and culture scene, all those world-class museums, theaters, and galleries.
Both countries clearly offer a ton of entertainment options, just different vibes.
So, whether you're a night owl or a culture buff, you'll find something to keep you busy in both places. Now, let's talk about housing options. What do they notice about the types of places people live in?
They saw all kinds of housing in Australia, from those standalone houses with big yards to apartments and townhouses.
Makes sense. The style probably depends a lot on the specific region and climate.
Exactly. And in Canada, they saw a similar variety, but they noticed Canadians tend to focus more on energy efficiency and insulation, which makes sense because of those winters.
They also mentioned basements being a common thing in Canada, more space and storage.
It's fascinating how climate influences how people design their homes, right?
Absolutely. Okay, how about the cost of traveling within each country?
They shared some good tips based on their experience.
They found domestic flights in Australia to be pretty pricey, especially for those long distances. They suggested driving or taking the train if you can, especially for shorter trips.
Good advice.
And in Canada, they said domestic flights were more affordable, but the distances are still huge, so road trips take forever.
They mentioned Canada has a good train system, a scenic and comfy way to get between major cities.
It sounds like each mode of transportation has its pros and cons in both countries.
It all comes down to your budget, how much time you have, and what you enjoy. Okay, let's talk about the social side of things. Making friends, building a social life when you're new to a country.
That could be tricky, especially in a new place.
They had some lovely stories about connecting with people. They said Australians are generally easy to talk to and open to making new friends.
They talked about being welcomed into social gatherings, which really helped them feel part of their community in Australia.
And in Canada, people were friendly too, but maybe a little slower to form those deeper friendships.
They felt Canadians were more reserved and private, but once you earn their trust, they're loyal and supportive.
Makes sense. Every culture has its own way of building relationships.
They stress the importance of taking the initiative, putting yourself out there, no matter where you go.
Totally agree, that's key. Joining clubs, attending events, starting conversations, it all adds up.
Okay, let's talk about the overall pace of life and the general vibe of each place.
That can make a big difference in how you feel about a country. They described Australia as having this relaxed, laid-back pace of life, especially outside those big cities.
They loved the slower pace, all that time for outdoor activities, socializing, a good work-life balance.
And in Canada, they felt the pace was a bit faster, especially in those urban areas.
They noticed Canadians were more driven and ambitious, with a strong work ethic.
They were also impressed by how much Canadians are involved in community stuff and volunteer work.
Sounds like each country has its own rhythm, its own energy.
It's about finding a good fit for your personality and what you enjoy.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about those cultural differences and etiquette, the things that can catch you off guard in a new place.
They had some funny stories about navigating those cultural nuances, those little things that can be so different between countries.
They found Australians to be pretty informal and egalitarian. They don't like putting on airs.
They felt comfortable just being themselves, not having to worry about fitting into a strict social hierarchy.
And in Canada, people were just as friendly and easy to talk to, but maybe a bit more formal in certain situations.
They noticed Canadians tend to be very polite and respectful. Good manners matter.
They also pointed out that tipping is a big thing in Canada, whereas in Australia, it's less common.
It's those little things that can really make a difference in your everyday interactions.
For sure. Being aware of local customs and etiquette can make your experience smoother and help you avoid those awkward moments.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about the more personal side of moving abroad, adapting to a new culture, making it your own. How did they approach that?
They emphasize being open-minded and embracing new experiences.
They talked about the joy of discovering new foods, new customs, new ways of doing things.
They were honest about the challenges, too. Things like feeling homesick, struggling with the language, feeling like an outsider sometimes.
They stressed the importance of finding support, connecting with other expats, finding ways to stay connected to your own culture, those things that make you feel grounded.
And they encouraged our listeners to see those cultural differences as opportunities to learn and grow, not as obstacles.
It's a great way to look at it. Adapting to a new culture isn't about instantly becoming someone else. It's a process of discovery and personal transformation. It's about learning and evolving.
Okay, let's talk about money. What did they say about the overall cost of living?
They offered some practical insights based on their own experience budgeting in both countries.
They found that Australia is more expensive overall, especially in those big cities. Housing, groceries, transportation, it all adds up.
And in Canada, things were generally more affordable, they said, especially when you get outside those major urban centers. They also pointed out that Canada's universal healthcare system helps a lot, takes some of the worry out of medical costs.
Of course, costs can vary within each country depending on where you live and how you live. But overall, they felt Canada was a bit easier on the wallet.
Definitely something to consider, especially if you're on a budget.
All right, let's talk about building a career in a new country. What tips did they have for job seekers?
They stressed networking, researching potential employers, really tailoring your resume and cover letter to match what they're looking for.
Solid advice.
They also said to be persistent and patient because finding the right job can take time, no matter where you are.
Persistence is key.
They recommended using online job boards, going to industry events, and reaching out to recruiters to get your name out there and build your network.
They also said it's important to understand the work visa requirements for each country, which can be tricky.
Definitely. That's something you don't want to mess up. Okay, let's move on to something crucial. Healthcare. How did their experiences differ in each country?
They said Australia has a really good healthcare system with universal coverage for citizens and permanent residents, and they had good experiences with doctors, hospitals, the whole system.
And in Canada, they felt the quality of care was good too, but sometimes there are longer wait times for certain procedures or to see specialists.
They did point out that Canada's system is publicly funded, so you don't have to pay out of pocket for most services, which is a big plus.
It's so important to do your research on the healthcare system wherever you're thinking of moving. Coverage, costs, accessibility, all those things can be vastly different.
Okay, let's talk about exploring. What do they say about traveling within each country?
They had some good practical tips, having done a lot of traveling themselves.
They reminded us how huge Australia is. Those distances between cities are no joke.
So plan your trips carefully and factor in travel time, especially if you're covering long distances. They said renting a car is often the best way to go, since public transport can be limited in some areas.
Makes sense. And in Canada, they said the distances are vast too, but they found the train system to be a good option, a relaxing way to enjoy the scenery while you travel.
It sounds like both countries have a mix of transportation options, and it just depends on your budget, how much time you have, and what you feel like doing.
Okay, let's talk about something that can be tough for expats. Adapting to a new culture and finding your place.
That can be one of the biggest challenges for sure. They shared some really thoughtful insights from their own journeys.
They said to be patient. It takes time to adjust. You go through those initial stages of excitement and novelty, and then there are those inevitable bumps in the road, like homesickness, culture shock, those moments when you just can't understand what's going on.
They stress the importance of support systems, connecting with other people who've been there, finding ways to keep your own culture alive, those things that make you feel grounded.
And they reminded us that cultural differences aren't bad things. They're opportunities to grow and learn.
Totally. It's a journey of self-discovery. Okay, let's get practical again. Accommodation. What did they learn about finding a place to stay?
They said Australia has tons of options, everything from fancy hotels and resorts to more budget-friendly hostels and motels.
And as always, the cost depends on the location, time of year, and the type of place. No big surprises there.
They said Canada has a good range of options too, but they noticed Canadians tend to care more about cleanliness and comfort.
They also said bed and breakfasts are popular in Canada, a more cozy, homey feel.
Makes sense. It's all about what you're looking for.
Okay, now for the fun part, and sometimes the scary part, learning a new language. Did they have any tips?
They had some great advice and some funny stories too.
They said the biggest thing is to be patient with yourself and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Everyone stumbles when they're first learning a language. It's part of the process.
They said to immerse yourself as much as possible. Watch local TV, listen to the radio, chat with native speakers, those kinds of things.
Great advice. And take classes if you can, or find a language exchange partner to practice and get feedback.
They told stories about those times they felt totally lost, but also those moments when they managed to communicate and connect, even with limited language skills. It's so rewarding when that happens.
It's a great reminder that learning a new language isn't just about memorizing words. It's about opening yourself up to a whole new way of communicating and connecting with people.
All right, on to a very modern necessity. Internet and mobile phone service. How do they stay connected?
They said Australia has good internet and mobile coverage in most cities, but it can be spotty in those rural areas.
And they thought the plans were a bit pricey compared to other developed countries.
In Canada, they found the coverage was generally good, even in more remote areas.
And they liked that the plans in Canada were more affordable, with more choices available.
So staying connected is definitely something to think about. Those little differences can add up. It's worth researching the options and finding a plan that works for you.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about getting around and exploring those wide open spaces. What transport tips did they have?
They said Australia has great roads and highways, perfect for road trips.
They recommended renting a car if you plan to do a lot of traveling, especially since public transport isn't always ideal in some areas.
Good tip. And in Canada, they said public transport is more common, especially in those bigger cities.
Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, they all have those great subway, bus, and streetcar systems.
And they said Canada's train system is well developed too, perfect for scenic journeys between cities.
Sounds like both countries have their transportation strengths.
It depends on your style, budget, and where you want to go. Okay, let's talk about the nitty-gritty of finances. Banking and financial services.
They said Australia's banking system is pretty sophisticated, lots of different banks and services to choose from.
Most banks have online and mobile banking, making things super convenient.
And in Canada, they were impressed with the banking system too, really focused on good customer service and security.
They also said Canada has a great credit card system, tons of rewards programs and perks.
It sounds like both countries have reliable, easy-to-use banking, which is a relief when you're settling into a new place.
Okay, on to something exciting and maybe a bit daunting. Finding a place to live and creating a home in a new country.
They had some good advice about the whole process, from searching for a place to making it feel like your own.
They said it's crucial to research neighborhoods, thinking about things like how close you are to work, schools, shops, all those things that make life easier.
It's so exciting to find that perfect spot, but there's also the less glamorous side, all those rental agreements, setting up utilities, those kinds of details.
Right. They recommended using online real estate sites, talking to local agents, and actually visiting places in person to get a real feel for the neighborhood and the property itself.
And of course, factor in things like moving costs, furniture, all those household essentials that add up fast.
They shared some funny stories about furnishing their homes in both countries, finding pieces that fit their style, making their spaces feel cozy and welcoming.
It's a reminder that finding a home in a new place isn't just about having a roof over your head. It's about creating a space that feels like you.
Okay, time for some retail therapy. Shopping. What were their thoughts on the shopping scenes in each country?
They found Australia has a great mix, everything from high-end designer stores to independent shops and big department stores.
A little something for everyone.
They did say things can be pricier there, but the quality is good.
And in Canada, they saw a similar variety, but they noticed Canadians are a bit more practical and value-conscious when they shop.
And they love that Canada has this strong culture of supporting local businesses. All those little shops and boutiques really add character to a place.
It's great when there's a mix of big and small businesses, something for everyone.
Okay, let's talk about something that can be a big adjustment. The climate and the environment. Did they have any tips for adapting?
They said Australia has a bit of everything, from tropical rainforests to deserts. They stressed packing the right clothes, especially if you're moving between different climate zones.
Good point. You don't want to be caught out in the outback without proper gear. They also reminded us about staying hydrated, using sunscreen, all those things that are easy to forget when you're excited about exploring a new place.
Now in Canada, those long, cold winters can be a shock to the system. They suggested investing in good winter clothes, a warm coat, hat, gloves, the whole 9 yards.
Canadians know how to do winter. A lot of homes have fireplaces or wood-burning stoves to keep things cozy.
It's interesting how those environmental differences shape not just how people live, but their attitudes and traditions too.
For sure. Okay, let's end on a delicious note. Dining out.
They had a lot to say about the culinary scenes in both countries. They clearly enjoyed eating their way through both places. They loved how diverse and vibrant the food scene is in Australia, influences from all over the world.
They raved about the seafood, the coffee, those creative fusion dishes blending Asian and European flavors.
And in Canada, they were impressed by how multicultural the food scene is.
Mm.
So many choices.
They particularly loved the Asian and Middle Eastern food they found in Canada. Great quality and reasonable prices, they said.
It sounds like both countries are a foodie's paradise, each with its own culinary personality.
Whether you're adventurous or just enjoy a good meal, both Australia and Canada deliver. And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive.
We've covered so much, from healthcare and bugs to food and job opportunities.
But there's still more to come. In the final part, we'll hear the couple's final reflections, those big picture thoughts on choosing between these two amazing countries. Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into Australia versus Canada. We've heard a lot from this couple who's lived in both, all those little details and personal experiences, and now it's time for the big picture, the final verdict. Drumroll, please.
I'm on the edge of my seat. After all those pros and cons, all those observations, which way did they swing?
Well, after all that, they landed on Canada, but of course there's a but.
There's always a but. What was their catch?
They said Canada wins, IF. So they could somehow replicate the life they had built in Australia. So it seems like all those years of building a career, a social circle, all that really weighed heavily on them.
That makes a lot of sense. Uprooting yourself is a big deal, even when the new place has a lot to offer. It's not just about the country itself, it's about everything you've built in your life.
Exactly. So what were those big draws to Canada? What made them tip the scales that way?
It seems like those intangible things really tipped the balance for them. They loved that outdoorsy culture, the emphasis on work-life balance, how easy it is to travel to other places from Canada, and of course those stunning Canadian cities, Vancouver especially.
It's cool how those things line up perfectly with what we talked about earlier, those differences in lifestyle and cultural value.
Yeah, they clearly value a lifestyle that's about nature, community, and balance. And they found that more in Canada, or at least that was their perception.
But they definitely didn't hate Australia, right?
Not at all. They loved the natural beauty there, the culture, the cities. Their experience shows that there's no right answer, no single best country. It truly depends on what you want, what matters to you.
That's such a key takeaway.
Yeah.
This deep dive was about more than just comparing Australia and Canada. It's about getting you thinking about your own values and what you'd want in a place to live. What are your must-haves? What are your deal breakers?
Exactly. Whether you're planning a big move or just dreaming of exploring new horizons, this couple's story gives you a framework for evaluating potential destinations. Those real-life anecdotes and insights make those comparisons so much richer than just a list of pros and cons.
Totally agree. And that's what we try to do with these deep dives. We don't just give you the info, we encourage you to think critically, to connect it to your own life.
It's about walking away with a more nuanced understanding of the world, seeing those different perspectives.
Well said. This couple's journey shows us that the best country isn't a place on a map. It's a personal choice, a feeling. It's about finding the right fit for you, the place where you can thrive.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Australia and Canada.
We hope you enjoyed it and that it sparked some ideas. Until next time, keep exploring and happy travels.
You need to watch this if you love a good adventure. Ready to explore history and travel like never before? Welcome to Two Travels and Histories. We're your ticket to the world's most fascinating places. Dive into gripping history tales, wander through stunning travel bits, and get swept away by our mind over matter podcasts. Whether you're a history buff or a travel junkie, there's Summit for everyone. So hit that subscribe button and join us on this grand adventure. Let's make memories together, one journey at a time. Cheers and see you out there.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about something that's probably on the minds of a lot of you out there.
Migrating to Australia from Nigeria.
That's right, in 2024.
Specifically in 2024.
And we know you're probably looking for a clear breakdown of the costs involved, and luckily we have an incredible resource to guide us.
Yeah, we'll be drawing on the first-hand experience of Joy, a Nigerian YouTuber who generously shared her cost breakdown after migrating to Australia in 2019.
Now keep in mind in 2019.
That things can change a little bit over time, But her journey offers invaluable real-world insights
Absolutely.
that you won't find in those generic migration guides.
You won't find them.
And trust me, her story is full of twists and turns, like discovering her visa was approved just a week before her program started.
I know. Talk about a last-minute scramble.
So let's map out this financial journey, shall we? Before we even dive into specific numbers, we need to talk about the importance of choosing the right migration route.
Right.
Are you thinking student visa, skilled worker visa, or something else entirely? Exactly. Your chosen path determines the visa requirements and the associated fees.
Yeah.
It's like picking a hiking trail.
Oh, like that.
Different trails have different levels of difficulty, and they require specific gear.
Okay.
Choosing the right visa type is crucial for setting a realistic budget.
So true. Joy opted for the student route, and she was upfront about the costs involved, including those sometimes dreaded agent fees.
Yes, agent fees.
In 2019, she paid between $150,000 to $180,000. But here's where it gets interesting. Those fees have jumped to $200,000 to $250,000 in 2024.
That's a considerable increase.
Wow.
It's essential to understand what these fees cover. Typically, they include handling your admission and visa applications and acting as a liaison with universities.
Right.
Before signing anything, clarify exactly what services your agent provides, and don't be afraid to negotiate.
Absolutely. Transparency is key. Joy mentioned friends who ended up paying a whopping $500,000, and so you definitely want to avoid those surprises. Now, once you've sorted out your visa type and agent, if you choose to use one, let's talk about a major financial hurdle: proof of funds.
Ah, yes, the infamous proof of funds.
I know everyone's probably cringing right now.
Australian immigration wants to be sure you can support yourself financially while you're there.
Of course.
Back in 2019, the required amount was around $20 million. And it's not just about having a lump sum sitting in your account.
Right.
They want to see consistent financial activity.
Right. It's like they're saying, show us you're financially stable, not just good at borrowing money for a visa application.
Exactly.
So what exactly qualifies as consistent financial activity? What kind of documents should people have ready?
Good question. You'll need to demonstrate a steady flow of income or savings.
Yeah.
Think regular deposits from your salary, business revenue, or investments.
Okay.
Bank statements covering at least 3 months are usually required.
Okay.
This helps paint a picture of your financial stability.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, Joy didn't have $20 million readily available. She ended up using her brother's account as her sponsor, which is something a lot of people do.
Lots of people do.
What's fascinating is that they shared the same surname. Does that actually matter to immigration officials?
It can.
Okay.
While it's not a guaranteed win, a shared surname can help demonstrate a genuine family connection,
Right.
making the sponsorship seem more credible.
Right.
It's like adding an extra layer of authenticity to your application.
That's a great tip. Now, for those of you who might not have a family member with millions to spare, Joy mentioned loan companies that specialize in providing proof of funds for a fee, of course.
Yes, these companies exist, but it's crucial to choose wisely. Look for reputable companies with a proven track record in migration.
Yeah.
Transparent fee structures and positive reviews. Remember, taking on this kind of debt will impact your finances in Australia, so factor that into your budget.
That's a crucial point. This whole process really highlights the need for meticulous planning and financial preparation, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Migrating to Australia is a significant investment,
Right.
and approaching it with a well-thought-out financial strategy can make all the difference.
I love that. Okay.
Now, speaking of planning, let's talk timelines.
Okay.
Joy's journey from starting the application process to receiving her visa took about 6 months.
Okay.
She began in May 2019 and had that golden ticket in hand by October.
6 months. That feels like both a long time and no time at all when you're waiting for something so important.
It's all relative, right?
Right.
It's important to remember that timelines can vary,
Of course.
depending on the specific visa type, the intake period for your chosen program, and even your individual circumstances. Joy, for instance, decided to defer her admission,
Okay.
which can affect the overall time frame.
Right. So flexibility is key.
Flexibility is key.
Okay, let's move on to another big chunk of the cost. School fees.
School fees.
Joy's Masters of International Business program back in 2019 cost $15,000 per semester.
Per semester.
Do the math. And that's a cool $60,000 for the entire 2-year program.
And remember, that's just tuition.
Wow.
Course fees can fluctuate significantly,
Yeah.
depending on the level of study, the specific program, and the institution you choose. Joy mentioned a friend who enrolled in the same program recently and paid $16,500 per semester.
Wow.
So when you're budgeting, it's wise to overestimate rather than underestimate.
You're telling me, and speaking of extra costs, let's not forget about health insurance.
Oh, right, health insurance.
Joy had to pay an additional $1,500 up front for her health coverage.
Right.
So make sure you factor that in.
Absolutely, it's an essential cost.
Yeah.
But it's easy to overlook when you're focused on the big ticket items like tuition and visa fees.
Of course, now Joy's story also highlights the importance of resourcefulness and exploring different avenues to save money.
Absolutely.
For example, she used the black market for currency exchange to get a better rate.
I mean, that's a bold move.
It's a bold move. It's not something we necessarily recommend as there are legal risks involved, but it does show that it pays to be proactive and explore different options.
Exactly. Just make sure you're aware of the potential risks and consequences before making any financial decisions, especially when it comes to currency exchange.
Good point. Okay, so you've been accepted into your program. You've got your confirmation of enrollment, or COE, as they call it.
Oh, that's a good point. We should probably clarify what a COE is, just in case some listeners aren't familiar with the term.
You're right. It can sound like insider jargon.
Right.
Basically, once your university accepts you, they'll issue a confirmation of enrollment, proving you've secured a place.
Right.
This document is absolutely essential for your visa application.
It's like the key that unlocks the next stage of your migration journey.
Exactly.
Without it, you can't proceed with your visa application.
Exactly. So with your COE in hand, the next step is the visa application itself, which, as you might expect, comes with its own set of costs. Joy had to shell out 250,000 euro for the visa application fee.
Right. And then there are the mandatory medical examinations, which cost Joy an additional $55,000, and biometrics for $11,500.
Don't worry, biometrics isn't some scary medical procedure. It simply involves recording your fingerprints and photograph for security purposes.
Right.
It's a standard procedure for most visa applications these days.
It is.
So don't let the term intimidate you. Those medical exams are really important, though the results are sent directly to Australian immigration, and any red flags could potentially delay your visa approval.
Absolutely.
Mm.
It's a good reminder to be upfront about any pre-existing medical conditions
Yeah,
and to ensure you're in good health overall.
absolutely. Now let's picture this. You finally landed in Australia. Everything is new and exciting, but you have nowhere to stay.
Uh-oh.
It's a challenge many new migrants face, especially if you don't know anyone in the country.
It is.
Joy went through this as well.
She did.
She explored several options, starting with school accommodation.
Right.
It seems like the most convenient option, but as Joy found out, it can be quite expensive.
It can be.
What other options did she consider?
Well, she looked into Airbnb, which offers short-term stays with varying levels of comfort and price points.
Okay.
It's a popular choice for new arrivals, as it gives you some flexibility while you search for more permanent housing.
Right. And then there's Flatmates, an app that connects people looking for roommates or shared housing.
Well, yeah, that's a good one.
It can be a great way to find affordable options and connect with other people, which is especially helpful when you're new in town.
Right. Each option has its pros and cons, though.
Okay.
School accommodation is convenient, but pricey. Airbnb offers flexibility, but can be expensive for longer stays. Flatmates can be budget-friendly, but require you to share space with strangers.
Right.
It all comes down to your budget, your comfort level, and how long you plan to stay in temporary housing.
It's like a real-life choose-your-own-adventure game, but with rent payments instead of dragons.
I like that.
Okay, so Joy navigated the visa application, medical exams, and even the accommodation hunt. What happened next?
Well, this is where things take an unexpected turn in her story.
Yeah.
Remember how I mentioned her visa was approved just a week before her program was set to start?
Uh-oh.
Well, that threw a major wrench in her travel plans.
I can only imagine. Did she have flights booked already?
No, she didn't,
Oh, no.
because she was waiting for her visa confirmation.
Oh.
With just 1 week to go, she had to scramble to find a flight. And as you can imagine, last-minute flights are notoriously expensive.
I can only imagine what kind of prices was she looking at.
We're talking anywhere from $1 million to a staggering year million.
Wow. I guess airlines know how to capitalize on desperation.
They do.
Did she manage to find a flight within her budget?
She did, but it wasn't without sacrifices.
Okay.
She eventually found a flight for $750,000 a car,
Ah.
but there was a catch: an 18-hour layover.
Oh, my gosh.
Remember that 48-hour journey I mentioned earlier?
Yes.
This is it.
That sounds brutal.
Yeah,
Who knew getting to Australia could feel like an epic odyssey in itself?
I know, right?
What advice would you give someone facing a similar situation?
The key takeaway here is to book flights in advance whenever possible
Of course.
to avoid those exorbitant last-minute prices.
Yeah.
I know that can be tricky when you're waiting for visa confirmations,
Right.
but if your circumstances allow for some flexibility,
Yes.
that can definitely help to avoid those sky-high fares.
Flexibility is definitely your friend when it comes to international travel.
It is.
Okay, so Joy finally made it to Australia, exhausted but triumphant.
Exhausted but triumphant.
Now let's talk about another crucial aspect of this journey. Pocket money.
Right. It's easy to underestimate how much money you'll actually need once you arrive in Australia. Joy brought $2 million, which might seem like a lot,
Right.
but it didn't even last her a month.
Wow, that's a sobering thought. I guess it's easy to forget that the cost of living in Australia is significantly higher than in Nigeria.
Exactly. And remember, it might take some time to find a stable job and start earning an income.
Right.
Those first few months can be financially challenging.
So how much pocket money should someone realistically aim to bring?
It's hard to give a definitive number,
Right.
as it depends on your individual lifestyle and spending habits.
Right.
But a good rule of thumb is to estimate your living expenses for at least 3 months
Okay.
and bring enough to cover that period.
That makes sense. It's about having a financial safety net while you adjust to your new life down under.
Precisely. And remember that 1 million might feel like a small fortune in Nigeria, but it converts to a much smaller amount in Australia.
Yeah.
Factor in food, transport, entertainment, and all the other expenses that come with living in a new city, and that money can disappear surprisingly quickly.
So planning your pocket money is just as crucial as any other part of this migration journey.
Absolutely.
You don't want to find yourself struggling financially, especially in a new environment where you might not have the same support systems as back home.
Right. It's all about being prepared and setting yourself up for financial success. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something that Joy emphasized in her video.
Yeah.
The importance of involving God in this process.
That's a perspective we don't often hear in these practical discussions about migration,
Right.
but it's incredibly important.
It is. Migrating to another country is a life-changing decision,
Yeah.
and it's natural to feel a mix of excitement, anxiety, and even fear.
Right.
Seeking guidance and support from your faith can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
It's about finding strength and resilience in your beliefs, knowing that you're not alone in this journey.
Joy's words about committing the whole process into God's hands really resonated with me. There are so many unknowns, and it's easy to get caught up in the logistics and anxieties of it all.
Right.
Having that spiritual anchor can make all the difference.
Absolutely. It's about finding peace and comfort amidst the chaos.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. Agent fees, proof of funds, school costs, visa applications, accommodation, those unexpected flight dramas, and even the importance of seeking spiritual guidance. Are you feeling overwhelmed yet?
It's definitely a lot to take in.
It is.
But remember, the goal of this deep dive is to equip you with the knowledge and confidence to navigate this process successfully. It's about understanding the potential costs, the challenges, and most importantly, the strategies for overcoming them.
Joy's experience is a fantastic blueprint, but it's important to remember that things can change. Visa fees might fluctuate, exchange rates can go up and down, and new requirements could pop up unexpectedly.
Yeah.
So while her story provides a great starting point, make sure you stay updated with the latest information and regulations.
Absolutely. Think of this as a dynamic process.
Right.
The information you gather today might need to be revisited and refined as you progress.
And don't be afraid to seek guidance and support along the way. Connect with people who've already made the move, join online forums, reach out to migration agents. There's a whole community out there ready to help you navigate this journey.
Absolutely. Remember, you're not alone in this.
Yes.
The migration community is full of people who've walked this path before, and their experiences, both the triumphs and the challenges, can be incredibly valuable.
So true. Now, before we dive into the next part of our deep dive, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned so far. What stood out to you the most from Joy's story? Was it the sky-high agent fees, the proof of funds hurdle, or maybe that unexpected 48-hour flight?
What resonated with me was her resourcefulness and her ability to adapt to unexpected challenges.
Okay.
From navigating the black market for currency exchange to finding a last-minute flight with an epic layover.
Right.
She demonstrated a remarkable level of resilience and determination.
I agree. It's inspiring to see how she turned those obstacles into opportunities for growth and learning. Now, for all of you listening, we want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder as we move into the next part of our deep dive. What aspect of Joy's journey surprised you the most, and how might it impact your own planning?
Take some time to reflect on that question, and we'll pick up the conversation in the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore even more practical tips and insights to help you prepare for your own migration to Australia. Stay tuned.
See that?
Welcome back to our deep dive into migrating to Australia from Nigeria. I hope you've had a chance to reflect on that thought-provoking question we left you with.
Yeah.
What aspect of Joy's journey surprised you the most, and how might it impact your own planning?
It's a great question to keep in mind as we continue exploring Joy's experience and extracting those golden nuggets of wisdom. Before we move on, I wanted to pick up on something you mentioned earlier about Joy's resourcefulness, especially when it came to finances. It made me think about the whole concept of sending money back home to Nigeria once you're settled in Australia.
That's a really important point.
Mm.
It's something that often gets overlooked in these migration discussions,
Right?
but it's a significant aspect of the financial reality for many migrants.
Joy touched on this in her video, talking about how the value of money is perceived differently in Nigeria compared to Australia. What might seem like a small amount in Australia could be a significant sum back home.
Exactly. And this can create complex dynamics within families, especially when it comes to expectations around financial support.
It's like navigating two different economic worlds simultaneously. You're earning in Australian dollars, but your family might be thinking in Naira.
That's a great way to put it. And this discrepancy can sometimes lead to misunderstandings or even tension if those expectations aren't clearly communicated.
So what advice would you give to someone who's planning to send money back home to Nigeria?
Open and honest communication is crucial. Before you even move to Australia, have a conversation with your family about financial expectations. Be realistic about what you can afford to send and how often. It's also important to factor in the costs of sending money internationally, as those fees can eat into the amount you're sending.
That's such valuable advice. It's about setting clear expectations from the outset to avoid any potential conflict or disappointment down the road.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about another crucial aspect of settling into Australia: finding work. While you might have some savings or pocket money to tide you over initially, finding a job is essential for long-term financial stability.
Right, especially with that higher cost of living we talked about earlier. It's good to have a financial cushion, but eventually you'll want to start replenishing those funds.
Absolutely. Luckily, Australia offers a diverse range of employment opportunities for skilled migrants. Joy emphasized the importance of networking and utilizing online job platforms like Seek and Indeed to find openings that match your skills and experience.
Those websites are great resources for job hunting in Australia, but I imagine it can be overwhelming sifting through all those listings. What advice would you give to someone who's new to the Australian job market?
Tailor your resume and cover letter to Australian standards, highlighting your relevant skills and experience. Don't be afraid to reach out to recruitment agencies or attend industry events to expand your network. And remember, persistence is key. The job search can take time, so don't get discouraged if you don't land your dream role right away.
It's all about staying proactive and putting yourself out there. Now, what about part-time work or freelancing opportunities? Are those viable options for someone who's new to Australia?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, taking on part-time work or freelance gigs can be a great way to gain experience in the Australian work culture, build your professional network, and supplement your income while you search for a more permanent position.
It's like dipping your toes into the Australian job market while still having the flexibility to pursue other opportunities.
Exactly. Websites like Airtasker and Freelancer can connect you with short-term gigs, while Gumtree and Facebook Marketplace are great platforms for finding casual work or odd jobs.
It's amazing how many resources are available these days to help people find work, even if it's just temporary.
The key is to be resourceful and proactive. Don't limit yourself to traditional job boards, explore different avenues, and be open to opportunities that might not be exactly what you envisioned, but could lead to something bigger down the line.
It's all about expanding your horizons and embracing the unexpected right.
Precisely. Now, while finding a job is crucial for financial stability, it's important to remember that settling into a new country is about more than just money. It's also about finding your community, adapting to a new culture, and creating a sense of belonging.
That's such an important point. It's easy to get caught up in the practicalities of migration, but the emotional and social aspects are equally important.
Joy talked about the initial loneliness she felt after moving to Australia, even though she was surrounded by people. It takes time to build new friendships and create a support system in a new environment.
I can imagine. It's like starting from scratch in a way.
Exactly. It's important to be patient with yourself and to actively seek out opportunities to connect with others who share your interests, or who come from similar backgrounds.
So what advice would you give to someone who's feeling isolated or homesick after moving to Australia?
Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Join social clubs, attend community events, connect with fellow students or colleagues. There are countless ways to meet new people and build relationships.
And what about staying connected with loved ones back home?
That's crucial too. Thankfully, technology makes it easier than ever to stay in touch with family and friends across continents. Schedule regular video calls, share updates on social media, and make an effort to bridge that physical distance.
It's about maintaining those connections, even as you're building new ones in your new home.
Exactly. Now, Joy also mentioned the importance of finding a spiritual community in Australia. For her, attending a church with a strong Nigerian presence helped ease the transition and provided a sense of familiarity and belonging.
It's like finding a little piece of home within your new environment.
Exactly. And it's not just about religion. It's about finding a community that shares your values, your culture, or simply your desire to connect with others who understand the experience of being a migrant.
It's about finding that sense of belonging and support, which is so essential when you're navigating the challenges of settling into a new country.
Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to emphasize that migrating to Australia is a journey of self-discovery and growth. It will push you outside your comfort zone, challenge your assumptions, and ultimately broaden your perspectives.
It's an adventure both literally and figuratively.
It is. And while there will be bumps along the road, there will also be incredible moments of joy, triumph, and personal fulfillment.
So for all of you listening who are embarking on your own migration journey, embrace the unknown, stay curious, and remember that you're capable of achieving incredible things.
Absolutely. Now, before we move into the final part of our deep dive, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've covered in this segment. What resonated with you the most? Was it the advice on managing financial expectations with family back home, the tips on finding work, or maybe the importance of finding your community?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. And as you continue to process all this information, we leave you with another question to ponder. What are your biggest hopes and fears about migrating to Australia, and how can you proactively address those feelings?
Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll catch you in the final part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up with some key takeaways and inspire you to take those next steps on your migration journey.
You need to watch this if you love a good adventure. Ready to explore history and travel like never before? Welcome to Two Travels and Histories. We're your ticket to the world's most fascinating places. Dive into gripping history tales, wander through stunning travel bits, and get swept away by our Mind Over Matter podcasts. Whether you're a history buff or a travel junkie, there's Summit for everyone. So hit that subscribe button and join us on this grand adventure. Let's make memories together, one journey at a time. Cheers, and see you out there.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into migrating to Australia from Nigeria. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From those eye-watering visa fees to the emotional roller coaster of saying goodbye to loved ones.
It's a lot.
And the thrill of landing in a new country.
I know.
It's been quite a journey just listening to Joy's experience.
It really has, and I hope that by sharing Joy's story and offering our insights, we've equipped you with the knowledge and, more importantly, the confidence to take those next steps on your own migration journey.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, let's revisit that question we left you with. What are your biggest hopes and fears about migrating to Australia, and how can you proactively address those feelings?
It's a question worth pondering, because acknowledging those hopes and fears is the first step to managing them effectively. The migration process can be incredibly daunting, and it's natural to feel a mix of emotions.
It's like standing at the edge of a diving board, excited about the plunge, but also a bit nervous about what lies beneath the surface.
That's a great analogy. And just like with diving, the key is to take a deep breath, trust your instincts, and remember that you've got this.
So for those of you who might be feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information and the enormity of this decision, what advice would you give?
Break down the process into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
Start by researching different visa options, exploring potential career paths in Australia, and connecting with people who have already made the move. Gathering information and building your network can help alleviate some of that initial anxiety.
It's like creating a roadmap for your journey, even if there might be a few detours along the way.
Exactly. And remember that it's okay to ask for help. Reach out to migration agents, connect with online communities, and tap into the resources available to you. There's a whole network of support out there ready to guide you through this process.
You don't have to go it alone. And throughout this deep dive, we've emphasized the importance of thorough planning and financial preparation. But beyond the practicalities, what other advice would you give to someone who's about to embark on this life-changing adventure?
Be open to new experiences, embrace the challenges that come your way, and remember that this journey is about so much more than just relocating to a new country. It's about personal growth, expanding your horizons, and discovering new facets of yourself.
It's about stepping outside your comfort zone and embracing the unknown, knowing that even the unexpected twists and turns can lead to incredible discoveries.
Beautifully said, and as you navigate this new chapter, remember to celebrate your wins, big or small. Landing a job, finding a great apartment, making new friends, these are all milestones worth acknowledging and cherishing.
It's about finding joy in the everyday moments, even amidst the challenges. Now, as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you with one final thought. Remember that this is your journey, and you get to define what success looks like for you.
It might not always be a linear path, but it's a path that's uniquely yours to navigate and to shape. Trust your instincts, stay true to your goals, and remember that the possibilities are endless.
So go out there, embrace the adventure, and create the life you envision for yourself in Australia. We're cheering you on every step of the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and best of luck on your migration journey.